us start with our panel discussions. So, the first panel is on the topic Incubating Wise Innovation, Process and Purpose. Let us introduce the esteemed panelists to you. One of the prominent figures of the Tata Group, Mr. KRS Jamwal, currently serves as the Executive Director at Tata Industries Limited, where he has conceptualized and incubated startups like Tata Click, Tata Class Edge, Tata Smart Foods, and many more. Additionally, he has successfully turned around unprofitable, legacy, or struggling businesses. He started his career as a TAS officer after being awarded a Scholastic Gold Medal at IIM Ahmedabad.
Please welcome him. Okay. Next, we have Mr. Pranav Kapuria. He is the MD of Hightech Gears Limited, a key enabler for auto OEMs for powertrain and engine component solutions. Over the last 3 decades, the company has achieved enormous sustained growth under his leadership. Outside of work, Pranav's raison d'etre is the mission strength, an organization that he co-founded to help people achieve their body recomposition vision, thereby enabling them to lead a more fulfilled life. Please welcome him.
Kanan sir is a professor of chemical engineering, systems and control, and educational technology at IIT Bombay. He has held the posts of Associate Dean R&D, Head of Application Software Cell, and Head of Center for Distance Engineering Education Program at IIT Bombay. He is a member of the Standing Committee of the National Mission on Education through ICT MHRD Government of India. He is known for his rigorous instructorship in the Design Project course at IITB, which has inspired many startups. Please welcome him.
Next, we have Professor Ashish Pandey, another professor from ITB, an associate professor at SJM School of Management, IIT Bombay. Professor Ashish Pandey is widely known for his interest in 3 areas: for his research and contribution in the areas of mindfulness and yoga and its relevance in the field of management, spirituality at workplace, business and society interface, and best practices in management and OD. Please welcome him. Now I request all the Varun sir, please come on stage and lead the discussion. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here, and we'll do our best to sort of share interesting insights. Your backgrounds are diverse, and therefore by no means do I want you to be constrained by anything that was said 10-15 minutes ago. Please go ahead and look at broadly the topic of incubating wise innovation the way you would. How would you frame the challenge or the issues? How would you basically frame what you believe are some good practices that you have seen in the field that are working? What might some challenges be, and so on. I do want to apologize to the my panelists, because Surya did send out a list of about 20 questions, none of which appeared on that 4. But as SPJMR students know, that's the nature of a surprise quiz, right? So that's what we're going to do. It'll force them to be on their A game, because whatever they prepared isn't what it is we're going to be talking about today. All right. So with that, Mr. Jamwal, why don't we get started with sort of your view on what wise innovation is and what you have seen through your years at Tata and elsewhere.
Firstly, I liked your presentation, Varun. Very nice. And good framework. To my mind, what happens is that the wise innovation piece is enforced by culture. And if your organization culture is one that drives a certain level of ethical and societal concerns, I think that overlay happens fairly normally, and a lot depends on leadership. If the leadership is prone to ask these questions before or at the same time as they ask the question of how much profit is there in this innovation, I think that automatically happens. Then down the line, people start thinking, yes, I'm making this innovation, but can it be used wrongly, or is it the right thing for us to do? I have a sort of personal hat I wear as a angel investor, and I think over the years in that personal hat, I've noticed that in the other ecosystem of startups or innovators outside the corporate world, I think that comes about uh, because of the healthy pursuit of profit. The moment you find unethical founders, I think most VCs and angel investors realize that your upside will usually be capped. So the most unethical founder will probably find a way to give you not more than 1x upside. A slightly clever founder will try and make sure he gets you out by a 10x upside. So nowhere will you get the 100x that you hope to get as a VC. So I think that overlay in your thinking of the role of culture and the role of a closed ecosystem, so to speak, which returns problems to those who behave unethically or without considering societal issues, would be a good overlay. Let me stop there.
Thank you. So somebody pointed out that perhaps 50% of the people here are associated with the Tata Group in some manner or the other, and at some point in their lives or the other, which I think is a testament to sort of your answer, which is, hey, the right organization will do the right thing, right? Usually do the right thing. You also talked about the fact that there are a system of checks and balances from the outside world, even outside of the Tata structure, that can force the right things to happen, right? So you took a fairly optimistic view, in terms of our ability to drive wise innovation. So, Professor Kannan, what is your view in terms of wise innovation, what you have seen? Now, you worked with a bunch of startups that have been inspired by your class. How have you tried to have these startup founders think about innovation as more than just the pursuit of the next valuation that they're going to get in their next round?
First, I would like to correct the facts, what is mentioned. By the way, I am happy to be here, and I'm not a theoretician, so I don't understand most of the things. Nor I have also not created many people who are entrepreneurs. It might happen. I'll just briefly tell what I did so that I'll set the context. About 15 years ago, I have been working on the idea of how do we train ordinary people, ordinary students, because IIT is always obsessed with the best, okay, but maybe the top 1%. What about the remaining 99% of the people? And especially when they get rejected, what happens to them? And they form our workforce. So can we do something about it? And so this is the problem I have been working on the last 15 years. Of course, we started with IT training. Can we provide IT training for the masses? And so can we motivate them? Can we instill confidence? Can we, even take them to the point of giving jobs? I'm talking about ordinary people, tier 2, tier 3 colleges, where they don't even have campus placement. I'm talking about the vast majority of our public. So anyway, so that is the context. That is my background. Of course, I'm a chemical engineer. I do teach project engineering, and they do work, and I've been trying to push them into chemical engineering entrepreneurs, but not succeeded. Not succeeded. So I would say my chemical engineering entrepreneur means somebody who should actually produce a chemical, a fine chemical or something like that. Maybe I'll succeed one of these days. I will say for wise innovation, I think it can only come from first, from confidence. Somebody who is not confident, somebody who is worried about his or her future or whatever, can never be a wise innovator, because we are talking about um, being correct to the society, even at the at the cost of losses and so on. That cannot happen if somebody is always trying to maximize something. The second thing I believe is upbringing. I believe that it is extremely important um, that somebody like Swami Vivekananda can influence through his writings millions of people, and that's why people look up to such great people. That one person can actually um, be the difference between I would say despair and hope, for example. So um, I don't know whether I have answered your question. Maybe I'll stop here.
Thank you. I have a follow on though for that. A point you made was it's easier to be wise from a position of security, right? So you're talking about the 99% of folks who perhaps are scrapping for their first job. And all of this conversation sounds extremely intellectual and academic when you're trying to basically find your first job. It's something, it's a luxury of the top 1% only perhaps have the ability to think about these kinds of things. But you also pointed out, with Swami Vivekananda's example, that there are ideas that become kind of normalized in society. So it doesn't really matter that you have to be in a position of strength in order to implement certain ideas. It just becomes a natural way that people think about things. So even if you had economic insecurity, the fact that you could be generous, is something that people do all the time. So in that context, are there things we can do, even with people who are not necessarily in a position to, at the individual level, as a position to be wise, to inculcate these things as just a matter of course that you think about?
Um, so all along, for whatever reason, I believed the scriptures when I read something, because most of the time people say, no, it's all written, but don't believe it. So I think that is an extremely important thing. And so when I finished my PhD, I returned to India and I had no job. And people said, you must be crazy. What do you have? Then I said, look, at that time, at least in some other surveys, people said India was one of the happiest countries. I mean, there were some various surveys. And I said, look, there are so many people, who obviously didn't study all the way up to PhD and all that. They seem to be happy. There must be something. So why should I be worried, right? So I think it is not the question of how much one has, what one's economic status is, because there is no limit to one's desires. Okay, so I think it has to do with going back the belief that it is possible. So in my case, it was a belief that it is correct. What is written is correct, and I should be a good person. I should, contribute back something to the society. One can go on talking about this, but whether to do it at the individual level, um, I've been, talking about, for example, yesterday I was at IIT Tirupati. I was talking to the IIT Tirupati director about, quality of construction. The quality of construction in India is generally bad. Okay. And I say at least 50% of them do use good quality material, invest good things, yet the product is bad. And that is because they are not well informed. Okay, not because of greed or whatever. In other words, I say that most people are generally good, and if things still don't work, maybe there is a lack of information, and we could probably address that and improve things. So I don't think it matters what the level of that person is. And I think our background, our upbringing, and so on are extremely important.
So, you're Ajinkya's faculty advisor, thesis advisor. So in that sense, you're as much a part of our faculty as Ajinkya is. So Professor Kannan was talking about the fact that some things which are just accepted can influence behavior regardless of people's situations. Now, you've looked at obviously the scriptures and sort of the Dharma Yoga, Dharma and Karma Yoga and so forth, to figure out how they might impact behaviors. Do you think that at an individual level, we talked about the organizational level of effect, but at the individual level, is that the way to go? Is the way to go to try and tie these intellectual concepts, not as intellectual concepts, but as just things you do because that's part of what being a good person according to your code of conduct is?
Yeah, so I'll seek your permission to answer a different question.
Well,
So-
you change the question, you can change your answer. Of course.
He's a professor. He gets the right to change whatever question he wants.
So you are asking about the individual, their disposition and how they can pursue this. To me, as an educator in the field of management, I think individuals, I go with the Professor Kannan, that individuals anyway are good. They have the right value system. It is, and particularly as we are sitting as a management school, what as a management education we need to do, probably that is a bigger concern of mine, and that's what I would like to kind of work upon. I have been thinking about it. So there are some amusing things. I really got amused. I was looking at this rethinking business, and we're looking at some fundamental concepts of the business and management education. So one fundamental concept is the sukha, happiness, satisfaction. What management education teaches about how you will get sukha? What it teaches? Need satisfaction, isn't it? You satisfy your need, physiological, this, that, and then you will be satisfied. ERG theory or Maslow is the basic one, and then all those are about, or maybe education, dignity, all that is talking about when the needs are satisfied, you will be happy, sukha. Another basic assumption about management education is artha. What is artha? What is the meaning of the value? What is the source of the creation of the economic value? And we teach and we believe that market is the source of value creation, is it? What is the source of power? The Rajya, the state. And we believe and we teach that source of state is power, is it? What is the value of science? And we believe and we teach that a source of the scientific pursuit comes from market requirement, human need, satisfaction, or state. Granovators were power, knowledge is power. Power means wherever the power is, knowledge flows from to that direction, all that. What Indian wisdom says about it is something very opposite to it. And I'm just juxtaposing the existing basic assumptions about the state, sukha, artha, rajya on the, or it is given in the one couplet in the Chanakya Niti, the Arthashastra. What and why Chanakya Niti? Because he has built his propositions based on the Tantra Yukti, which is kind of a basic scientific kind of a process of, and it is coming from the scripture. So it's a well referred work. He has referred all the scholars before. What it says that sukhasya moolam dharma, happiness, the source of happiness we consider need. What scripture says, sukhasya moolam is not need satisfaction, it is dharma. Following the dharma very beautifully defined by Professor Surya. So sukha will not come by satisfying the need, it is following by the dharma. And for dharma, where the dharma comes, the role of society and education is to make people to see what is their dharma. What is the source of artha? We say it is market, but what it says is sukhasya moolam dharma, dharmasya moolam artha. Without arth, dharma cannot be followed. Arthasya moolam rajyam. Until the state, the governance system is strong, the earth will not kind of can be created. The purpose for the individual and society cannot be created. But what is the Rajasya Moolam? Rajasya Moolam is not power. Rajasya Moolam is Indriya Jaya. The people who are at the governance, the source for their power does not come from source for the state. The base of the state doesn't come from the power. It comes from the self-control. Na jnane, na karmana, na prajaya, tyage nekin atma tattva manashu. When the tyag is the ultimate kind of a recognition, then naturally state will be the strongest one. And the governors, the people who are governing that state will be the capable of governing that. And what is the Vigyan for? The Vigyan is not for the satisfaction market or state. It is Atmanam Sampade. The science is that which help people to manage their self. So if you look at most of the science happening around us with the power of market or state, it is taking people away from the self. But the real sciences which make people take the self-mastery. So, who is going to do that? Individuals are not going to do that. It is education system who have to change what they are teaching. I'm reminded of that famous article, the last article written by Professor Sumanta Ghoshal. Bad management theories are destroying good management practices. And then we are asking what individuals can do. Come on. Society has to do. As an institution, we have to do something. As an individual, we are fine.
So as a individual faculty member, right, that is teaching a bunch of individuals, let's say you have a class at IIT Bombay that is part of their Center of Entrepreneurship that's teaching people how to use, let's say, a specific approach like the Lean Startup method in order to find a problem that's worth solving and to solve it. So now as a faculty member, how would you bring these concepts into that particular class?
Yeah, so actually last year we got some support and I was thinking about it for some time, and then everybody is talking about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship in my life actually happened very late. I was born to be the to be the teacher, but it happened a few years ago. I'm working on this. Entrepreneurship as such is not the panacea. It is not the solution of all the problems. It is wonderful we are talking about it as a society, and there is a pratishtha, there is a recognition for the entrepreneurship. But since entrepreneurship has to be understood in terms of what the tradition says, is it can be sattvic, rajasic and tamasic entrepreneurship. What kind of entrepreneurship we are producing? It is sattvic entrepreneurship, which is according to the dharma, rajasic entrepreneurship, which is about need satisfaction and pleasure, or it is tamasic entrepreneurship, which is taking people away from their self-mastery. So that's how I would like to, actually I'm working on it, and my team is working on a framework. We have looked at the Swabhava, the framework, and trying to interpret the entrepreneurship in this Indian way. It is not an entrepreneurship secular thing. So, sattvic entrepreneurship.
Thank you. So Pranav, since we obviously now have a precedence of answering whatever questions, of setting the questions and answering whatever we want, that's perfectly cool. So why don't you go just free form and share with us what you think wise innovation is, how it has impacted your life, what are you doing to drive it, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, just extremely privileged to be here. Thank you very much. This was the exact thing going on in my mind, so I'm going to actually stick to the rule. I won't change anything for you. I will be very brief on innovation because I have a principle of innovation. That is, when something is innovated, respect it. So you've innovated a perfect definition of innovation, so let me not innovate on top of that. I think that was a great definition of innovation. Second thing I'd like to just share about my experiences is that my own lab of innovation is myself. That's my lab of innovation. It isn't the outward, world. I personally believe that outward manifestation is simply a function of inner integration. So I'm my own lab, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I would like to talk a little bit about wisdom and how I see wisdom and how I see all of them coming together. Wisdom, and if that's okay, I'll just use a little bit of Hindi and Sanskrit words. We have stalwarts here, so please correct me wherever I need to be corrected. Vivekshilta, agar wise leadership, so it's Vivekshilta, that's wisdom. And leadership is netritva. And apparently what it simply says is, how can we be vivech pratikaran, the ability to discern, differentiate. And I'm reminded of my professor, as my teacher while I was sitting here, of calculus, a subject that I used to quite honestly be very afraid of. Didn't know how much use it had in life of integration and differentiation, and how spiritual that subject was when you actually look at it. So if we want to be differentiated, if we want to use discernment from a wisdom perspective, the amount of integration required for that, I have experienced, is to be huge. You can't discern things unless and until you're yourself integrated in every way possible. And that's been my journey. A. B. Netritva, or leadership, is to see things. Netra, which means to see, the eyes to see. And I see sometimes that in my own self as well, that it takes me a while to see things for what they are. I am so hypnotized sometimes by the polarities, by the noise, by the surface, so much that I'm not actually able to see things. So my own journey is about washing the lens. We were talking about washing a lot of things, so let me just talk about washing the lens, because I think the one thing that must be washed is lens, often enough. And just looking at different kaleidoscopic angles to see things for what they are. So whether it's wise innovation or wise leadership, it is the ability to see things for what they are to begin with. They are to be integrated within yourself so that you can differentiate and discern appropriately between things. And what is the one thing that one needs to discern and differentiate is nitya nitya. What is permanent and what is impermanent? Fundamentally, when you understand that root, you can see things for what they are. And second thing is that there is permanence and impermanence and impermanence and permanence. It is actually one. So more than, and this is what I tell, in my organization, the young GETs, day before yesterday, I was talking to them, that please don't see things so much from a problem-solving view. I think one of the biggest problems we've created for ourselves is having a problem-solving view to everything. The 7-step process, the FA sheets, all of the good stuff. I'm from the lean manufacturing Toyota school, Toyota production system school, which is fantastic. But I think somewhere we have ingrained ourselves so much in problem solving that we are not seeing things through a polarity lens, which is very different from problem solving, where you don't need to solve anything. Polarity is interdependent opposites with a continuum. Doesn't need to be solved. You don't need to solve night. You don't need to solve day. You just need to see the entirety of the 24 hours. I was talking to someone here in your institute around dark leadership or dark innovation and things like that. And if you just look at it from a holistic view, from a polarity lens, it's just a polar view. I don't know if we can get hypnotized only by the good of an innovation, because there is a polar side of it too. And I think that's the nature of nature. Now, how do we engage in the entirety is probably a question we should be asking ourselves, rather than on the one pole, which is what we may seem to be good, or at a point in time we may see it to be as bad. But over years, the same thing which we all see as bad could actually mean very good. And something that we could see as a boon would kind of be quite a bane, years, decades, or centuries down the line. So I love this session, and I'm very happy to hear everything from everyone else. I'm going to hand over the mic back to you and promise you that I'll stick by your rules. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. So building on what you have said, as we look at Tata's, you've been in a position where you have had to make difficult choices, either for new ideas, new innovations coming to market, or in many cases, as you had to turn around organizations that perhaps were losing money and therefore had to rethink their approach to innovation, and their approach to going to market. Achieving that balance between sort of profit and other kinds of outcomes, I'm sure you've faced that many, many times. Personally, definitely Tata as an overall group, yes. But can you share a couple of examples sort of from your career, companies you've run and places where you actually had to apply this kind of a trade-off thinking where the answer wasn't clear, or there could be multiple answers that could have been possible? And how did you end up picking directions from any of your companies in the past?
Interesting question. Actually, if you're talking about turnarounds are different because you have to sort of find a path forward. And yes, there are instances where we couldn't find a path forward and we had to shut down the business. And then your focus, and this is where the Tata culture comes in. You're allowed to look after the employees or give a runway until you find them all jobs. So turnarounds are different because normally the pressure during a turnaround is there's no single bullet that's going to solve it. So it's not that you're necessarily looking only at innovation, you're looking at a whole host of things. But in terms of new businesses and innovations, one of the biggest learnings I've had over time is, well, two. One is for any innovation, product market fit is an iterative process. It doesn't just happen. In fact, let me make a provocative statement. The two constituents that are worst at product market fit development are large corporates and scientists. Large corporates because they think from a certain level of arrogance that capital and capability will automatically mean that the market loves whatever we create. Scientists because they are wedded to their technology or to their solution and they feel, I've made this, everybody has to love it. And actually, when you really start a business based on innovation, not only are there many aspects of your product, but there are many market segments to that product. And iterating between product aspects or features and market segments who may like different features, and seeing which ones give you the unit economics and the early adoption which takes you off, is actually a very intensive process, which is why relatively few founders or relatively few businesses get through that process. I think that's an underappreciated part of the process of building businesses or innovation. People don't talk about it, people don't even know about it until they go and start doing it. And it takes a long time. And most of the failures happen there. Let me leave it there. A couple of provocative things is enough.
No, I'll ask you one more about Tata itself.
By the way, I thought one of the companies I admire from IIT Bombay did a good job. He met me when he just graduated. Carbon Clean Solutions came from IIT Bombay. And it's a chemical thing. And it's a chemical. It's a CO2 absorbent. So you can take credit for that. You have created innovation.
So staying with the with Tata, so maybe this will be, and I put this out even if it provokes certain, strong reactions because sometimes it's challenging a sacred cow, if you will. Let's take a look at Tata Nano and see, was it a wise innovation or was it not a wise innovation? If I look at it in terms of the outcome or the purpose and the process, from a purpose point of view, you cannot doubt the sincerity of why the Tata Nano was built. It tried to satisfy multiple needs, not just for profit for Tata, but it tried to satisfy safety needs for society of the 5 people who were riding on a scooter that perhaps, could have a more safe environment and so forth. So very few would argue against sort of the wisdom of purpose of the Tata Nano. Yet the product had its struggles. And even if you put the operational issues aside, one finding could be that it didn't quite meet the aspirational needs of what it is that, people wanted in a car, right?
I know where you're
So
going.
could you go with the process of innovation? So from a wisdom perspective.
I think that you've actually asked the question to my previous answer. So let me reiterate.
Educate me again if you're advised.
The Nano was a perfect innovation. The kind of work and effort that went in, the problem definition, all of it was perfect. But I said, didn't I, that large corporates don't iterate product market fit. One of the things was you went for a big launch. Big launches are not good for iterating product market fit. If you want to get product market fit, don't do a big launch. I still say the product was fantastic, is fantastic. with that big launch came this sort of media blitz of cheapest car. Now, I use a phrase for Indians, and I've been using it for all of us Indians for the last 15 years, but especially it stayed in my mind when we were doing Tata Click. We are aspirational deal seekers. In Europe, a guy goes to buy a BMW, he'll go to the showroom, he'll decide trims, color, everything, and walk out of the BMW. Here, first thing the guy can afford a BMW, he'll say 5% discount. We are aspirational deal seekers. At every income level, we are aspirational deal seekers. Look at the aspirational piece. People are buying a car for 1 lakh, right? A bike in those days was 35,000. So the family is really stretching. They want it. But the moment you say cheapest car in the world, he's spending 1 lakh and he's going to drive next to his neighbors and they're going to say, oh, cheapest car in the world. Doesn't work. And the funny part is this was institutional knowledge. I remember asking Rajiv Dubey, right? Tata Motors. I remember asking Rajiv Dubey, I said, Rajiv, your Indica ad 2001, 2002, maybe 2003. Your Indica ad is all about these 5 people jumping into a Indica and going to the beach and having fun. It doesn't talk about the most crucial things, the fantastic mileage and how cheap it is. He says, Jamal, the guy is buying a car because it's cheap and it gives great mileage. But he don't want his neighbors to know that. He wants his neighbors to think he's in the coolest car. So Nano had its challenges for that. It was nothing to do with the product. It was nothing to do with the market. It was when you're selling aspirational consumers and saying cheapest car, it's not going to work.
So I'll make a leap of faith here and ask you what you think about this, and then the rest of my faculty colleagues. Could it be that the essence of wisdom in innovation is iteration, as you said? Just trying to like throw a thought out there, saying if you had to throw away every single idea we've talked about and sort of say, we live in a world where we don't have full information. We should have.
You can't derive universal truth.
No, I'm going to take a shot.
If you're a Steve Jobs, go for it. You don't need to iterate. So it depends on. Sorry.
Yeah, your mic, please. Yeah.
I don't believe in universal truths. I know academics like universal truths because then they can put on a slide and teach.
No, with the contingencies
20
noted,
classes
right?
On that same thing. There is no universal truth.
Yeah.
The fact is, you do have the occasional Steve Jobs. He knows exactly what he wants to deliver to the consumer, and he makes it so good and so brilliant. Of course, there are many aspects to it about him setting up the Apple stores, the distribution. If you had tried to stick with traditional distribution, it wouldn't have been aspirational enough. But people like him, while rare, break the mold of that intensive iteration.
Yeah. So looking at
Sorry, go ahead.
no, so looking at the non-Steve Jobs, but looking for sort of a wisdom principle here is kind of what I was trying to throw out here. So we live in a world where we're never going to know everything one needs to know. We live in a world where we have to reflect. We live in a world where we have to be compassionate. All that is true, but we have to also take action, right? I mean, that is a fundamental of wisdom, right? You just can't think. When you take action, if you believe that's the core of wisdom, action is likely to be wrong as often as it's likely to be right. And so in that particular context, unless you're a visionary that knows exactly what is what, could basically the notion of wisdom and innovation really just be boiled down to somebody that didn't understand the wisdom literature at all, to say, as long as you're iterative and modest and recognize you can make mistakes and you go fix it, that's really what wise innovation is. It completely messes up my slides, by the way, but just throwing it out there. In your experience, what would you think?
Actually, it doesn't mess up your slide at all.
Oh, thank you.
Because what your definition captured, or at least the way I received it, was exactly this. And I just want to cull that out, given that you've asked the question. I think your definition talked about the paradox. It talked about the creative tension, the dynamic tension. And I want to just color that out a little bit because it'll tie back to iterative movement and action. And I want to step back and just ask ourselves to reflect. Why is it so difficult for us to stay in dynamic tension? Why is it so difficult for us to stay in paradox and polarity? Why do we want to jump and solve everything at the speed of light? I think that's the critical question. So to build capacities within ourselves and in our organizations to stay, to take a pause and to be present when we are in dynamic tension is very, very important. And it's a key principle of appropriate innovations, wise innovations from within to come out as appropriate manifestations. Whether they work or they don't work, there's no judgment on that. But the idea is to stay in that dynamic tension. So wisdom emerges, and as soon as true wisdom will emerge, the product automatically will serve its purpose. If its purpose was, and I'm no judge on an institution like Tata Motors or anything, but with all due humility and with a lot of compassion, I do say that. If Nano's only universal job was to serve a family, then it did that. And we should be proud of that. You know, the aspiration of an owner could be that it should serve millions of families, and that's very noble. But maybe the universe had a very different wisdom to it, which is said only 5 families, and that's it. And let's be proud of the creative tension that team was in, and some part of the team that wasn't in, right? And had to move forward. So I'll just leave it at that. But I think there's a lot of pride I have in the Tata Nano. So thank you.
Thank you. So if we agree, and I'd like the from the Indian literature, the wisdom literature perspective on this. Failure and making the wrong decision is a fact of life. Even a wise person who has to act can make a mistake. What does the literature say about making mistakes, recognizing mistakes, and fixing mistakes?
So, use my probably recording. Yeah. So making mistakes. One thing is that Indian literature do not prescribe the norms. It insists on realization of truth, not recognizing, not memorizing the truth. So there is a deep experiential basis of the wisdom in the literature. So that what happens in that deep experiential, in those deep experiential moments, actually the dualities melt down. So dualities are wonderful things because that is the way the life manifests. But in the deep states of mind, dualities melt down and you experience that oneness. And that is considered to be the source of ideas, interestingly, in the wisdom. So we all talk about brainstorming, and the brainstorming is a great way of generating ideas. And the Indian wisdom says, no, not storming is fine. Brainstilling is the source of the ideas. So it talks about the qualities of mind. So there are different qualities of mind. So mood, which doesn't have any sense. And Chipta is like very flickering mind. Vikshipta is interested mind in multiple things. Ekagra, which is focused mind, and Niruddha, which is seized, which is owned. The mind, I own my mind. I am not mine, I am owned my mind. So it is very different from cogito ergo sum. I am because I think, but you apart from thinking to do 10 other things. So thinking is one aspect of being as it is understood in the Indian wisdom. So the source of the great ideas is ekagra mind and the niruddha mind. So that's a very fundamental, and that's where we talk about going beyond the dualities and coming up something which looks paradoxical, but which is very natural. So the very basic tenets of the Indian wisdom is what? What are the pursuits of life? Pursuits of life: dharma, artha, kam, moksha. How come in the same breath you are talking about kam and moksha? But all are important. When we internalize that, whatever we do takes care of all these 4 things.
So absolutely agree with you on ideas coming from a place of stillness as much as it is from a place of storming and so forth. So my question was a little different, right? Wisdom is applied in an innovation context. The innovation context is basically one where the likelihood of your decision, of being wrong is pretty high, right? And therefore the ability to fix things, whether it's unintended consequences or consequences that were not realized, has to be there. So and this will be a terrible analogy, but if you'll forgive me. So let's say Krishna has advised Arjuna to start, to get going on his 18-day journey. So all of the Bhagavad Gita has happened. On day 2, Arjuna says, you know what? I'm not sure this thing is working out. Let's pause and think about what our change of course could be, because that is the nature of innovation. There is no certainty that you then blast through other than when you're Steve Jobs. What, if anything, right, in the wisdom tradition, and David, feel free to jump in as well, what, if anything, in the wisdom tradition recognizes that you could be wrong just as often as you're right?
So, as my understanding goes, Bhagavad Gita or Sri Krishna in that conversation, they were very clear that anything can go wrong. Any arrow coming from any direction could kill the person. This was very well known. It was not like, so the Arjuna was asked to get into this war is not because there is a high probability you will win that. Krishna said this? No, he never said this. Anything could happen. But what is the dharma of that moment? The dharma is to fight. Anything can happen. I may fall. So that's why in the course of conversation, some point Krishna says that if you die, you will get the Sadgati. If you win, you will enjoy the state. It's power. That's it. So success and failure is not determined by the outcome. It is determined by whether it is dharmic or not. I did something which was dharmic, best of my intentions. Things have not worked. That can happen. What is my preparation for that? So Karma Yoga says there are 5 factors. Adhishthan, what is the purpose? Cheshta, the effort. Karan, instruments. One more I am forgetting. And can you remind me, Ajink? And 5th is the Daiv, which is emergent reality. You can take care of 4 things, Adhishthan, Karan, Cheshta, and still something can go wrong. For that, there is a Daiv. There is always an emergent reality in the system's thinking. Living system can always throw something which is emergent, which is not predictable. So that can happen. But in that process, am I doing according to dharma or not? And then what is my mind preparation? So for the preparation of mind, literature talks about, wisdom literature talks about the Sham, Dam, Titiksha, Uparati, Shraddha, and Samadhan. That's a real spiritual capital. Some, controlling my mind, controlling my indriya, the senses. Do I have my ownership on my senses? Dam, am I able to go according to what is needed instead of what my mind says? After doing all that also, something can go wrong. So Uparati, can I come back again and again? If I am on the path of righteousness, this itself will give me energy and go back to the next. What is needed to the next moment? That's a wisdom literature says.
Professor Kannan, any thoughts on whether it's the Nano or whether it's the Bhagavad Gita and so forth?
I would like to mention 2 things. In fact, I would agree with what Mr. Jambal said. Because we had run this project Akash along with Professor Phatak, right? It was not ready, but it was big blast about it is the world's lowest, cheapest, and we were not ready. And although I would say that the project achieved its objectives, for those of you who don't know what Akash was, it was a $35 tablet in those days. One of the main objectives, and of course people said that it was, in fact, in those days, capacitive swipe tablets were not available at such a low price, a lot more expensive. The idea was to bring down the prices to acceptable levels so that people can actually go and buy. That happened towards the end of the project because people, in fact, there were news reports saying that who needs Akash now? Prices have crashed. But it could be that because of Akash, prices crashed, right? And people talked about it is not responsive and so on, but nobody said that iPad 1, how it was when it was. So, because at the time iPad 2 had come and people were always comparing with that. But I think had the hype not been made, it probably would have succeeded. Of course, it also became a political kind of a thing because the government changed when MHRD said that we should go ahead with it. So it was in that sense, the prices crashed, became affordable to most people. Whatever the objectives were, they were met. It is just, it didn't happen through Aakash, use of Aakash per se. Okay. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. The other thing that I would like to say is in these things about the innovation and what we take for granted, it's probably not the reason. For example, I talked about training lots of people who don't, I mean, ordinary people. Okay? One of the things we said was, can we provide IT training to people at the bottom of the pyramid, not to make them Einstein or something like that, but so that their employment potential will go. That's it. Very simple kind of a thing. In my opinion, somebody from a polytechnic getting 10,000 rupee per month salary is a great achievement, because maybe 2-3 people in his house will have food, for example. So how did we do that? We said that I want to make sure that the videos that I make are suitable for self-learning. And I said, can I give a guarantee that it is possible? So I said, we got the idea from the movie industry. Most movies have scripts. So we said, our tutorials also will have script, not extempore. Except that a beginner will certify that they can understand, which is a difficult thing because scripts are created by experts, but a beginner has to certify. So it goes on getting simplified and finally. And we said that it has to be a side-by-side learning because I'm a Linux person. So get totally amazed by Windows. The first thing you do is maximize. That means you see only one thing at a time. In a Linux world, you see so many screens. Even to tell people, look, there is a video and there is a software, keep them side by side. People don't understand, how do I keep them side by side? I can see only one thing at a time. That itself was an effort. Anyway, we got through with all that. And they just have to listen to the video step by step. They have to reproduce and it would work because it is guaranteed for self-learning. And we expected that 75% marks should be scoreable by anybody almost. Then my managers came and told that, such and such college in Tamil Nadu, they were reporting only 25% pass rate. Okay. So can we make our questions a little simpler? Okay. I said, let's find out what they are doing. It turned out that they didn't have access to computers. They were supposed to reproduce. Everybody was supposed to reproduce every command. At the end of it, they'd say, I have done it. It turns out that for whatever reason, they were just playing the video and there were 30 students sitting and watching. Okay, it became like a movie kind of a thing. So the thing is that, you come up with nice plans. So then you have to go back and make sure that it really happens. In the sense that then we came up with measures to make sure that they will not do that. They will have, and then we said that if you don't have computers, individual computers, then you can't do this. You can't do this on a tablet. You can't do it on a mobile phone. Because we are talking about getting jobs in IT industry, you need a computer minimum. So we have to enforce many things. So of course we worked reasonably well and we have trained 7 million students using this method. Thanks.
So, with that, I think that's a fantastic example of wise innovation, right? So here's Professor Kannan and his team targeting a need at the bottom of the pyramid to provide them IT training. So if I were to sort of go back to the wise innovation model that we came up with, from a purpose point of view, this is one of those beautiful examples that actually meets all the criteria. You're trying to essentially provide benefits of a multidimensional nature. So wonderful example of purpose-driven wise innovation. But there were also wonderful examples or illustrations of wise innovation from a process point of view. As we saw, assumptions that you made, the continuous learning that you had as you basically, the realities came in, the humility with which you were willing to make changes, but the confidence with which you were willing to deny requests like reducing the pass rates, right? That paradox, as you said, that ability to be confident about certain core principles, but the ability to be flexible about other things. I think it just was a wonderful example. And with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists and wrap up the panel for the day. Thanks.